Here's a super quick demo if you have ever wondered maybe what your hair would look like as a different color. So why would you use an app if you can do this directly in Photoshop? So I have this image that we were working with for the Frankenstein demo. If I go over to the adjustment tab here, I'm going to grab that hue saturation. And we talked about this very, very briefly in the demo, and we'll talk about it more at length next week. But I want you to see here, you can select the master, which is essentially all of your RGB values, your red, blue, your green, but you can also break that down into specific channel colors as far as what you want it to affect. For example, if we select yellows and we take the saturation down, all of the yellows become desaturated, or if we take it up, all of the yellows become super saturated in the piece. But for what we're going to be working with, I'm actually going to just utilize the master to show you a couple of things. Right now, the hue saturation layer is affecting the entire document. We're going to keep it that way for a little bit, and then we're going to mask it out and paint it back in. So let's say I want to change the color of her hair to something different. Well, if I take this hue slider, sort of has that Wizard of Oz horse that changes color effect, but let's sit right over here at this like rose colored purple. Obviously this is affecting her whole image, not just the hair. And we're going to change that, but it sure does look good on the hair. So we're going to keep it like that, and then we can always come back and make some modifications. But all I did was move that hue slider around until I found the color that I want to keep. If I hit Shift F5, I can fill that adjustment layer with black, which essentially works like a big black mask that I can cut into, carve into, paint into the areas that I want. So now that that's been covered, if I grab my brush tool or B, I can start to paint that color in only on the hair. You know what? You don't need Snapseed for this, right? Just a little Photoshop. This is not going to be perfect, but you notice this background here is white, so I don't have to be super careful about it, which is kind of cool. Awesome. Then I might grab the sides here. And clean up a few spots. Don't quite look correct, like on the ear here and here. And there you go. Purple hair. Now from there, if you did want to change the hue, right now it's at -54. I can play around and try a whole bunch of different colors, which is so cool. You might be wondering, okay, well, what about saturation? Absolutely. Just like it works on Instagram, you can pop that saturation up or down if you've ever wanted to know what you look like with the very popular from like 6 years ago gray hair look. You can do that. And you can also modify the lightness and the darkness. This is definitely going to show itself, especially if you have a background that is calling attention to itself, just like the white background just did for me here. So I'm probably not going to modify that too much. The other option is to check colorize, which will essentially make the hue that's popped up sort of a flattened version. It's not going to look quite as realistic. But as you pull that slider, you're actually getting the color that the slider says it is. So it's a slightly different effect. It might work for some folks and not for others. I do feel that without the colorize tool on, it does tend to feel a bit more realistic. We've been talking about portraits today. So one other thing to mention is, you can utilize these tools, clone stamp, etc., to remove blemishes, to whiten teeth, do all of those things that the Facetune app does, except you can do them slightly more realistically, ... question mark. And so I'll show you a couple of strategies if you are interested in editing portraits or you take a lot of portraits of your friends, the way that you can do this in Photoshop utilizing the tools that we talked about today, kind of what that application is. To do that, if I go to Command-Shift-N, I will call this my blemish layer. Just made a new layer for that. I'm going to grab my clone stamp tool, and I can use my clone stamp tool or the healing brush tool, actually, my favorite, to hit Option, click, and start to eliminate blemishes. Now, clone stamp tool tends to be slightly more obvious than your healing brush tool. I can do it, it looks fine, off and on. She has great skin, so there's not a whole bunch to work with, but everyone has blemishes, even if you're 40 years old. I'm going to hit E to erase it real quick. And I'll just show you for a point of difference what the healing brush tool does. If I grab that, the spot healing brush tool operates similar to the clone stamp tool. I like the regular healing brush tool personally because I can choose what area I want to bring over. Now you're noticing it didn't work. That's because I also need to check aligned and then current and below with that healing brush tool. And what's really nice about this, instead of the clone stamp, is that it is going to select a bunch of other areas and really give that sort of smooth illusion by layering essentially skin on top of skin. So definitely try it out if you are interested in using Photoshop for this. The other thing that you can do is whiten up teeth. Now her teeth are pretty white, so this isn't going to make a huge difference, but I do want to show you how I would go about doing this. I would go to Adjustments, I would grab my Hue Saturation, and then I would select specifically from that tab my yellows. And I would pull the saturation of my yellows down. Now, it's not doing great things to her face. That's fine, because I'm going to mask it. I'm also going to pull my lightness up maybe by about 15. Essentially, by desaturating yellows, you're targeting the area of the teeth that's yellowed over time, and then you can navigate that and manage it. So obviously I don't want this applied to the whole thing, so I'm going to hold down my Shift button and hit F5, fill it with black, grab my brush tool, B, and I'm only going to paint it in on the teeth. Again, she's in a pretty good spot as far as having whiter teeth, but if you have more yellowy teeth or drink a bunch of coffee or know someone who does make a pretty big difference. So anyway, some fun other applications as far as portrait editing. If I had taken pictures of you guys from the class and given you your own portrait, I'm sure you would have a lot more fun than looking at other students' portraits. But I hope this is a great starting point, and if you do want me to take your portrait in the hall at some point whenever we're back on campus, flag me down, let me know. Cool. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in to my bonus part of the Frankenstein demo today.